At 50 years old, I found myself a widow after 32 years of marriage to my high school sweetheart, father of my children, and pappy to our grandchildren. I committed to being faithful no matter what God still had for me. 1 year later, he placed Diego into my life. When I met him, he was already suffering many effects of diabetes, including impending blindness. I saw in him strength, a survivor, and a love for God. I fell in love. 2 years later, he asked me to marry him. He was already on dialysis and could no longer drive. When I said yes, I knew I was marrying a sick man. I promised him 2 weeks or 20 years, whatever God had for us. It turned out it was almost 16 years. Diego died of kidney failure on August 3rd of this year. What I'd like to share with you took place in the last 20 days of his life, an uphill sprint in this race in which I was powerfully refined in self-control, perseverance, and godliness. Around 4 months previous, Diego had a medical event that brought us to the decision that he would now only receive comfort care rather than intervention. During this time, we had long, deep, and precious talks about his faith and his end-of-life desires. We planned the details of his funeral. At that time, we knew that the end was near, but we didn't have any idea about how or when it would come. He wanted to die at home, with me taking care of him till the end, and I promised I would. During the years leading up to this time, my role as caregiver became more and more necessary. As it intensified, I realized my selfishness. I would grow weary and frustrated, often lashing out with impatience and unkindness. Once those words are out, you can't take them back. I hated my fleshliness more and more and pleaded with Jesus to please transform me. He showed me that that was exactly what he was doing, and that self-control, kindness, patience, and long-suffering would come as I purposed to practice them. His mercies were new every morning. So each day I would ask him to make me more like him. On July 15th, we learned that his transplanted kidney was failing. This began the most grueling uphill sprint I have run in my 45-year-old race. It is also where self-control, perseverance, and godliness merged for me. On the morning of the 15th, before I got the diagnosis, God gave me a great and precious promise in Psalms 121, 1 and 2. I will lift up my eyes to the hills, from whence comes my help. My help comes from the Lord who made heaven and earth. He assured me that I would need his help and that he would be there. In the next 20 days, selfishness was out of the question. My needs didn't matter. It became all about keeping Diego comfortable and out of pain until the end. My help from the Lord came as I needed to advocate for stronger medications to ease his painful itching and aching joints as the toxins increased. It came when I felt miraculously rested, even though I had hardly slept the previous night. It came in outside reassurance when I fell apart because I wasn't sure I was doing it right. His still small voice and sweet presence were so real in that dark room in the middle of the night when I held Diego's hand and told him over and over that he could go home. When I felt my endurance was wearing thin, I couldn't do it anymore. God unexpectedly sent some dear friends by my past to spend the night on their way home to North Dakota. He showed me that perseverance means continuing to run when your strength runs out, and you must depend on His. Just like Peter was able to walk on the water, I was able to persevere when all I wanted to do was cry and quit. I experienced godliness at the top of that hill at 2:30 in the morning when Diego left for glory. In the depth of my grief, I knew the joy. He was with his Lord and Savior. I had persevered to the end and was able to keep my promise because God kept His. To say I had added godliness seemed a little arrogant, but I know now that it was what allowed me to proclaim the truth of the gospel to unbelievers in the eulogy at Diego's funeral. I want to encourage you that you grow most when you surrender, trust in His promises, and cling to Him as He delivers you through the hard